Hey guys, I'm Coach Michael Burt, the super coach.
That's right.
I believe everybody needs a good coach in life. And here's one of my coaches right here, guys. The real deal, Brad Lea, straight out of Las Vegas. Virtual training, Lightspeed virtual training, the #1 training platform in the world. He's in town for a couple days in Nashville, Tennessee. Today he spoke to my monster producers this morning. And while I was sitting in the back, Brad, welcome to Nashville, by the way, brother.
Well, thank you, sir.
And thank you for being such a good friend. You guys know that my Monster Growth Academy is on Lightspeed. And this morning I'm sitting in the back and I'm listening to Brad. I've got my mega monsters in there. Those are people who earn over $250,000 and above. And I go back to something that I believe for a long time, and that is that trained people always outperform untrained people.
Every time.
And talk a little bit about training, because you know, your story with Lightspeed is that you were, would you consider yourself a trainer, a speaker?
100%.
100% trainer. And you would go in and coach and train these folks, and then you would leave.
That's right.
And then everything would go away.
Yep.
It was like cotton candy.
That's right.
And you said, I got to solve this problem. And that's when you invented Lightspeed, which was, what, 17 years ago?
Yep, 2000.
So let's go back, because you've been speaking to our group today. Let's go back and let's talk about that, because there's a lot of people out there, I guess, who misunderstand what training is. They think they go to a seminar or a workshop or a one-day event. You really believe that training is uncomfortable, and it's something you do not every now and then. You do it in a consistent process. Talk about that.
Yeah, training's something you do, not something you did.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? Training takes repetition, practice. Training takes constant application, constant development. There's a Japanese word called kaizen.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say kaizen.
How do we say it in Tennessee?
Kaizen?
Yeah, that's
I don't
right.
know. How y'all doing? How y'all doing out there? But, you know, if you really are trying to improve your skill, you need to train and practice.
Yes.
You know, look at the military. Why is it you go to basic training for all that time and then you constantly train even when you're out of training? Military trains more than probably any organization out there.
Mm-hmm.
Athletes, coaches,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they train their players nonstop, not just game day.
That's right.
Way before game day.
Yeah.
Training isn't something you did, it's something you do, it's something that you apply, it's something that you continually repeat, and most people confuse training with exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So companies will invest in their training thinking that they're going to get these results, but the results usually expected are from training, when in reality the results they get are not what they intended, because they didn't actually train, they simply exposed.
You know, and I think about what exposed me today, and you guys know I'm in the coaching and training business, but I'm sitting there thinking we're not training our people enough. Right. We're not training our people on a consistent. See, I define coaching as engaging a person in a set of systematic behaviors that allows them the ability to do something tomorrow they cannot do today. Well, that's not going to happen just through exposure. So I bet every person who's watching this out there right now, they're not in a training program. They're getting exposed to training, but that's the reason they're not showing an increase. Now, in the sports world, when I was a basketball coach, we called it muscle memory. And muscle memory was because you took 5,000 shots. So when you got in the game and the referees were there and your mom and daddy was looking at you and cheerleaders were looking at you and the coach was screaming at you, you could still do it because of the number of times you'd practiced.
So 5,000 and they were done?
No, 5,000 a day sometimes.
Then they were done?
Sometimes I think it was 500 a day. I used to have my players take 500 shots a day.
When were they done?
They were never done.
When were they done?
Every day they came in and trained. But business people.
If you're not training, you're straining.
Right.
Write that down.
If you're not training, you're straining, right?
That's right.
And so, but a lot of people think exposure to a product, because I think about the amount of training. I look at the people who are in Monster Producer, my big coaching program, and I say, who's earning over $500,000 and above in personal income? And there'll be a group that'll raise their hand, and I'll say, how many years have you been with me? How many years have I been your coach? And they'll say 5, 6, 7. It didn't happen in 30 days, man. It didn't happen in 60 days. It didn't happen in the first year. It happened on consistent, ongoing, systematic training. And so you're seeing, but very few companies. We got one company I know that's on our online academy, our Monster Growth Academy.
Doesn't mean they're training.
Doesn't mean they're training. Well, but with my own eyeballs, the Hotze Wellness Center starts every single morning off in our online
That's training.
academy. And they have to practice in front of. They have to show a demonstrated capacity. That's what you're saying training is.
Training, yep.
And how many companies are out there doing that, though?
Not many. Maybe 1 to 4%.
And that's why they're not hitting their sales goals.
Well, I mean, some of them might be hitting their sales goals, but it's not because they're training. It's because, the market or the product's great and, their advertising's great or whatever the case may be. But just because you're, exceeding doesn't mean that you can't surpass that. So again, a lot of times when companies are kicking ass, but they're not necessarily training, they would just kick more ass if they trained.
But somebody's got to believe in the training, buy into the training, engage with the training, right?
Yeah, or you have to hold people accountable, create a culture of learning, expect that they train, demand that they train, and training's uncomfortable.
Right.
Just like getting abs at the gym, man, it's not comfortable. But if you want them, there's enough information out there to get them, right? We're exposed to the information all day long. Google how to get abs. You'll get 7 million billion ways to get abs. Then look down at your big fat belly and then wonder why you don't have them. Because all the information's right there, but yet you still got flabdominals. Now, why is that? Because they're not training. They're just exposed to the information.
Flabdominals.
Yeah,
is that a real word? I like it. I don't know if it's a real word.
You ain't got a six-pack, you got a keg.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, look at someone with abs. They go to the gym. They eat right. They've absorbed the information and applied it. And that they do things consistently over and over again. Repetition is what builds muscle. But when it comes to like sales and success and skills and things of that nature, it works the same way as developing a muscle. You can understand something, doesn't mean you've learned it.
That's right.
Right? So like, I know French. If you were to say to me, avec moi, well, I know that means with me. But I don't know French because I've never learned it.
Right.
Once I speak fluently, now I've learned it.
Right.
Okay, so the question is are you trying to learn or are you trying to, get by?
Well, I think as you're talking, I'm thinking about the process of learning is you got to get in a mindset to hear the message, right? Then you got to comprehend it. Then you got to synthesize it. Then you got to internalize it.
Got to have accountability.
You got to have accountability, and then you got to actually do it.
Yep. I know somebody that, trained somebody for 6 months and they just weren't getting any results. And so they called me to come in and kind of audit their training system. So I went in and I heard what they were telling that person to do, and then I watched that person throughout the day, and that person did not do what they were trained to do. But see, the person did the training right, so the person was trained, but they didn't have any accountability. They didn't inspect what they expect. So the person, although they were trained, they weren't applying the training, therefore the result didn't happen. So there's a lot to training, but it's definitely not here, read this book. How many of you would go to a church where the pastor read the Bible once?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And, if you talk about any famous book, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends, Influence People, most people read it more than once. Why is that?
Yes.
Why do you think that is? Because they want to absorb the information. They want to actually be able to apply it. And in order to apply it, you have to learn it. In order to learn it, it takes repetition, accountability, and practice. That's why the military goes on drills. They go on drills forever. There's not a time where they aren't, running drills. Athletes running drills. Why is the number one athletes, the number one teams win championships right back at it as soon as the games are over? Tom Brady, when he did that in the Super Bowl, he didn't do it in the Super Bowl. He did it in the 6 months prior to and the 6 years prior to. The constant training is why he could do that in that Super Bowl.
Yeah, when you think about this, I think, like I said, I think it's ongoing systematic training and coaching that allows you to do something tomorrow you cannot do today. So you mentioned a key word in there that I think everybody's lacking, which is the accountability structure, okay? I think we need accountability because we all start with good intention.
Yep.
People this morning heard you, got jacked up, got excited. They want to go do it. They're inspired to go do it. But then for some reason, they're going to fall off the wagon.
Yep.
Lack of self-discipline, too much distraction.
Comfort.
No focus, comfort, whatever. And then they're going to feel guilty about it because they're going to grieve their lost potential. They're going to say, man, why did I fall off the wagon? Why didn't I do it, right? So talk a little bit about that accountability structure, because I believe 100% in accountability. I believe that we encourage what we allow. We allow people to be lazy, they'll be lazy.
Yep.
But just throughout the day, we found out, even in my own organization, that there's all kinds of things we could be doing better, right? We think we're doing good because we're growing at a 206% rate right now, okay? So I look at that and I go, man, it's unbelievable. We're exploding. We're blowing up. We're jumping $1 million. And that's big for a small shop, right? But just today, we figured out, man, we're not prospecting 2 hours a day like we should be. We're not answering the phone probably correctly. We're not maximizing our resources. I mean, that's very easy. You can't see the picture when you're inside the frame, but it all does start.
There's no consistency in some things.
There's no consistency on some things. We do have structures in place. We have an explanation of services, which most people don't. We have a selling system that uses 10 to 15 strategies to get the phone to ring. We do follow up 7 touches, like the percentages tell, right? And we do try to extract 5.7 referrals from every transaction that we get. We do those things, but just through interaction with you today, we could do them much better. Okay? So talk about the accountability structure there. When you say accountability, give people a real example of a company that you know that really has accountability.
Well, I don't know too many.
I know, they're not out there.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd have to search the world over. I think you can tell by results who has accountability. Like the number one teams usually have the most accountability, individually and as a business. I mean, sometimes you have to hold your employees accountable, and sometimes you have to hold yourself accountable. And unfortunately, it's uncomfortable. People don't like to be uncomfortable. Nobody really likes to be uncomfortable. But if you want to grow, if you want to succeed, you want to win, it is uncomfortable to do it. And so outside your comfort zone, you ever heard of that? You got to get outside your comfort zone.
Right.
Well, what's outside your comfort zone?
Right.
It's uncomfortable out there. That's why people retract and go back to their comfort zone. Well, if you get comfortable and you want to grow, it's time to get uncomfortable again. So I always say, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
So let's talk about these 4 things, because I've kind of, I've coached salespeople for 10 years now, right? Mostly people who are interested in some type of rapid growth.
Yep.
Typical return for us is about 43% in the first year with us. That's what they're getting if they do what we're teaching them to do, right?
Yep.
I have found 4 big missing structures in most sales organizations, right? Number 1, they do not know how to explain their services in a way that compresses the sales cycle, right? Consistent, that articulates their differential advantage. They do not have a selling system, which is how they generate leads on a consistent basis, right? That is systematic in nature, like a calculated and coordinated attack. They do not have a 7 to 15 touch follow-up plan, or use the challenger concept to actually get a person off the fence. And they are not extracting 5.7 referrals from every transaction. It doesn't matter if they're a billion-dollar company or if they're one real estate agent out there in the world, one mortgage originator. They all have missing structures in those 4 areas. Is there anything that I'm missing that you believe, because that's where we're coaching people. We coach on those 4 things because I think people are more motivated by what they'll lose than what they'll gain. So I'll say, look how much money you're losing in these 4 areas. If we just tackled one of these areas, you're going to make a lot more money.
Well, sure, if they apply it and if it works.
Right.
Yeah, so with that, let me just say this. There are companies who are afraid to train. They're not afraid to train. They don't believe in training. They don't believe they're going to get 43% increase or everybody in the world will be buying your training. So as your people, get no's from certain clients that won't sign up, it's because they don't believe you. Because who wouldn't want 43% increase, whether it's an individual or a company as a whole? So if they don't buy it, it's because they don't believe you, bottom line. Now, why is it they don't believe you is the question. It's not necessarily you or what you're saying. It's because throughout their life, that individual, that decision maker, whoever it is, they've experienced training and haven't experienced the gain. They've paid people like you to come in there, and they didn't get the result. They didn't get the 43%. So you keep doing it long enough, pretty soon you just stop buying into the fact that training works. You stop buying into the fact that you can actually get that impact. And then when someone comes along and says, hey, I can get you 43% increase, why don't you pay me chump change? Because it's chump change compared to that.
It is.
People don't do it. And the reason why they don't do it is because they don't believe it. And the reason why they don't believe it is because their past experience has shown them that training doesn't work. But what they're failing to understand is they've never trained. They've only exposed, and exposure doesn't work.
Right, right. And I could definitely see that. And a lot of times they don't believe in their own self to take action, right?
There's a lot of them.
They don't believe that they have
some
a
people are just dumber than a box of rocks.
Yeah, and they're not going to grow.
Training is the number one. Training has the single highest return on investment a company can make.
Yes.
There's people that'll spend $50,000 a month on advertising just like that, no problem. They've been doing it for years. But they won't spend $1,000 preparing their staff to be ready for those customers that came from the advertising. So 50 grand a month in advertising, no problem. It generates us 1,000 customers. People come in, we close them, we close at 20%. Bam, we get 200 people to buy out of the 1,000. We make a buttload of money. Well, you can take that same $50,000 and do it a little bit differently. Spend $40,000 on advertising, $10,000 on training your people properly and effectively, and $40,000 will produce more than the $50,000. So let's say, based on that math, you get 200 people per 1,000. So if I'm going to spend $40,000, I'm going to get 800 people through the door. Well, I'll close more of the 800 people than I did the 1,000 people. So why are you paying for 200 more people to come through the door just to close less than you would have if you'd had 800 people through your door? People don't get that. It's like you'll spend $50,000 to bring people in the door and nothing to prepare your employees to convert that traffic at a higher level. Not only convert them, but treat them better. So now you have better chance to get referrals. You have better chance for positive word of mouth advertising. People don't even ask for referrals correctly. People don't know how to overcome objections. People don't know how to have whatever you called it. What'd you call it?
Explanation of services?
Yeah, explanation of services. I can't tell you how many times I go into retailers. I mean, I buy things all the time. I'm quite the consumer. Salespeople suck out there.
They do.
And mainly it's because they don't get the training necessary. And then you can ask the people, how do you guys train your people? And they'll tell you they're training when they're actually exposing. They're not. Training is getting a bad rap. It's like you're not really training.
Right.
You know, it's a fraud.
Right.
It's like, oh, what do you do? Well, we hire somebody and then we set them in a room and we let Bob talk to them. Now, is there any consistency? Oh yeah, Bob says the same exact thing every time. No, Bob doesn't. And first of all, have you listened to what Bob's telling your people? Bob's telling you what he's telling your people, but have you listened to what Bob's telling your people? Because if you haven't listened to what Bob's telling your people, how the hell do you know what Bob's telling your people? You're just assuming what Bob's telling your people. So there goes that accountability. I need to now go listen to what Bob's saying. And if I'm in there every day, Bob's going to say it every single day, which means if I want to inspect it every single day, I have to be in there every single day. And if I'm in there every single day, what the hell I need Bob for?
Right.
So guess what? If you created a virtual training option, Bob doesn't change. Once you make Bob say the right thing in its entirety, now I can train somebody with that person and get the consistency. Now, again, here's another problem companies have. Companies will train their staff, but not their management. And if they do, they train their staff on one thing and management on another thing. To where now I have management training and I have staff training. Here's the problem with that. If I don't know what my staff is supposed to be doing because I wasn't in the same training they were, how do I hold them accountable to it? So let's say you came into my company and you trained 20 of my sales guys. But I wasn't there because I'm a big manager. I don't have to be in there. That's for those people. So now I don't know what it is that you trained them. And then you leave, and now I'm watching my 20 guys. and they're not doing what you told them to do, but I don't know it because I don't know what you told them. So now I'm watching them do whatever the hell they want to do. I'm assuming they're doing what you taught them to do. And when I don't get the result, oh, that Coach Burt, we tried him. It didn't work.
That's right.
His training, yeah, it didn't work. Yeah, we'll find someone else. So now you lose a customer when in reality, it wasn't your training. It was their lack of accountability. It was the fact that they trained the salespeople without training the management. If I say any more, I'm going to have to charge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sitting there thinking about, we call that slippage in the sports world. It was between,
I call it stupidity.
Stupidity slippage. But it was the difference between what a team member had been taught to do.
Have you guys shared this out? This right here is gem worthy.
You need to be sharing this out because I can tell you, people out there are not training. I'm just going to tell you right now. We had 30 or 40 mega monsters in here this morning. They all had the same conclusion.
I'll bet you right now we bring them all back in. You quiz them on what it is I talked about.
Yes.
They won't remember half of it.
That's right.
And by the way, I was training them.
Well,
I wasn't training them. I was straining them.
Yeah. Well, you know what I think they all came to the realization was that we are not training our people. That's the realization that people had.
And what's crazy is companies are spending millions on training, and they're not even training.
So how much money are you losing if people are more motivated by what they'll lose than what they'll gain?
Forget money. How about time?
How much time,
What's
energy,
more valuable?
By putting them on the phone with a person that's not trained. So let's talk about.
And you're losing business you don't even realize you're losing.
Right.
So not only the tangible losses, but the intangible.
Listen, it makes me sick. I mean, I sit in the back and was just getting sick about the millions of dollars that we could be losing. Because what if we put them on the phone with people who are not trained, right? Training. I'm 100% in agreement with you. Train people outperform untrained people. You're right. People are getting exposure to training. They don't know it. They haven't internalized it. There's no accountability.
And that's the good companies. Good companies train, or they think they do. There's a lot of companies that don't train at all.
Most companies don't train at all.
And they don't train at all because they don't think it works, because they've tried it and it didn't work, but what they don't realize is they didn't try training.
They didn't commit.
Well, they didn't try training.
Yeah.
The true word of training.
Yeah.
They didn't try training. They think they tried training, but they didn't. I mean, at the end of the day, training is the single highest ROI anybody can make. I mean, if I can teach someone for $1,000 how to increase their revenue by 43% for life, by the way, once I teach you, you're good to go.
That's right.
Do the ROI on a $1,000 investment if I were to make 43% more in my income, more in my revenue. Maybe that's not even my net.
Well, and we've got Tommy Davidson, Good Time Tommy, who's here with us today. He said something to me one day from years ago when I went in and trained his real estate firm. He said, the way my broker should look at this is not only the money he got back from me doing more deals that year, but the amount of money he will make for life off that one-time training, right? And that's how people need to be thinking about it, because it's not just that 1 year; it's going up every year. It's from 45 to 60 and 70 and 80 and 100.
Keeps on.
It just keeps on going. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And so what we're doing now, though, is there's a shift that's taking place in our country. You said today that online training is gone up 500%, is expected to go up 500%, right? Now, let's talk about that, because I do lots of live events. People come see me in Monster Producer, but they're getting about 9 touches in a month. They're getting to see me 2 or 3 times live. But with the online academy, the Monster Growth Academy, they literally could get trained by me personally every day or anytime or anywhere they would like to, right? On their own schedule.
Yeah,
so talk about the value of that.
And as often as they need, because people also learn differently. Just because, like, normally when someone has a training class at a company, they put everybody in it. Well, there might be some people not needing to be in there. You know, maybe some of the top people. I went in to pitch a company once, and, you know, they were talking about buying the training system that I trained a long time ago. And there were people in there that didn't need it. And I said, this isn't for your top salespeople. But is everyone a top salesperson? I said, does everybody on your team sell as much as you want them to sell? They're like, no. How many do? 20%. Okay, those 20% this isn't for. They're already kicking ass. Go kick ass. We're not going to bother you. Like, we're going to support you, we're going to cheer you on, we're going to be your best friends. But if you're not doing that, which 80% of the team is not, that's who the training's for. The training isn't for your top people. So again, with the Monster Growth Academy, you're able to, train people based on who they are, what they need, not just a blanket approach.
Yeah, and one thing that happened this morning, I would challenge every person watching this. Have you even audited how your own people answer the phone?
Do you even know how you want them to answer?
Do you know how you want them to answer phone? Do you know how you want them to follow up? Do you know how you want them to articulate their services?
Basically, represent your brand. Do you know how you want them to do it, or are you assuming that they know just because you know?
So the trend is going to be for people to be trained online. What is the objection that people have as it relates to online training? Because I'm sure you've heard every objection there is. My people won't do it. Okay. We like live, we're old school, we like to get it live. I mean, for all the people that are out there, this is the future of where training is going, because even in my case, there's one Coach Burt, there's 350 or 400 customers, right? We can only put so many people in a room. Fire marshal came yesterday where we were at and tried to shut us down because we had too many people in the room. So overcome those objections in people's minds that they have that are really silly little complaints about something.
Well, it depends on what the objection is, man. Have people throw out some objections.
All right, so if you had an objection to the online.
First of all, listen, if I've got 500 people in a room, how do I personally, individually train them one-on-one? I can't. If someone says I can't get my people to do it, I'll say, well, then introduce me to the boss. And if they say, well, I am the boss, well, then I look at them a little bit weird. Like, you're the boss and you can't get them to do it. Well, do you get them to show up in the morning? Yeah. Well, what if they didn't? Well, then they wouldn't work here. We'd fire them. Try that approach. Create a culture of learning. If someone isn't interested in representing your brand at the top level, you shouldn't be interested in keeping them employed.
Yeah, let me step in here, because this is really, I don't want to use the word pisses me off.
I get him excited.
But this pisses me off.
Firing him up.
Because if you have a culture, I see some of my former players on here, by the way. If you have a culture that people are not interested in their own potential, they're not interested in growth, they're not interested in learning, they're not interested in training, why are you allowing those people? And you say, well, we're making a little bit of money off of those people. You're not making, listen, it ain't worth, the real estate agent that's doing 2 deals a year and you think you're making $500 off of them, so let's keep the low budget around. Let me tell you something. It ain't, what it's doing is hurting you from recruiting better agents.
Some people say it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
It's not better than nothing, because it hurts your brand perception. Do you really want that agent out there representing your brand? What's the cost of that agent representing your brand in the market? I want you to really think about that. What's it cost to your recruiting? Because like gravitates toward like. Do you want to attract winners, or you want to attract losers? You want to attract A's or B's or C's? So I see a lot of people go, well, we're making a little money off of them, so let's just not bother them. And I hear this one a lot that makes me sick. 20% of the people produce 80% of their results. It's like that in every order.
Why?
Why do you have those 80% of bottom feeders anyway? I mean, what it's doing is just bringing your brand down. Listen to the silliness of this. And so, because that's what you're saying, is show me the boss. Right? If I tell my employees they got to be on our online academy every day, that's what they got to do to work here.
Yeah, or don't work here.
Or don't work here.
Because I'm not afraid, I personally am not afraid if someone quits, because I have a training system to train anyone exactly like I want. I have a button I can push to hold them accountable. I can go through the training on my schedule, not his schedule. I don't have to come to Murfreesboro. I can do it wherever I want to do it. So I've got a system, so it kind of gives me back the power as an owner. I'm not held hostage by my employees because if I lose them, I can't find other ones. Well, you can't find other ones because you don't have a training system, because you can't get people to succeed. You can't get people to win. You can't get people to want to be there. So you better just ultimately let them run your business.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, they're running it into the ground.
Yeah.
I know people that they don't have sales teams. They think they have sales teams. They actually have sales prevention teams. And that's what's crazy, because a sales prevention team's doing $200 a month. And they're like, dude, our sales team does $200 a month. I'm like, no, that's your sales prevention team costing you 800 deals. It's the truth.
It is the truth.
Because if you trained your people effectively, you would do more than you're doing today if you're not training. It's almost like if I lift weights and I'm not lifting weights, I'm going to grow my muscles. You know, unless there's some crazy disease that I have or the law of physics doesn't apply at my house, then other than those two exceptions, if I go to the gym every day, I'm going to get in better shape. It's the law of physics. It's the same thing. Train your people, they'll get better. The question is, how fast will they get better? Is the training right? Well, once you find the right training, now you have to find the right application for it. Some people apply it incorrectly. If I go to the doctor and they give me the right medicine, but they squirt it next to my arm, it's not going to work. And then I'm going to think the medicine didn't work, right? Now, if they actually get it in my arm, but it's the wrong medicine, I'm going to say the medicine didn't work, and the medicine didn't work. So sometimes it's the wrong medicine, sometimes it's the wrong application. But here is a fact, and I can say this with perfect certainty and without fear of contradiction. If you train your people effectively, it'll be the single highest investment, return, ROI, you can get, period.
Well, I'm thinking about a client we have in Houston, Texas named Hotze Wellness Center, and they got on my Monster Growth Academy prior to me ever showing up in person. So for 1 month, the founder, Dr. Hotze, his CEO, Monica, Stacy, their whole team, I show up on day one, and it was like they were light years ahead of everybody else I'm training. I'm like, man, you guys...
Well, that's because they got up to speed before you showed up.
They did. So most people, it takes 6 months to get up to speed, right? They got to learn their explanation of service. We got to implement. Well, what they did was they got on the online academy. I show up, and it's like, hey, we're already there.
Yeah, we already know.
We already
know. You know
know.
why? Because when you say you showed up the day they turned on the training system.
That's right.
You've been showing up individually, one-on-one, since the real you showed up. The virtual you showed up the second they logged in.
That's right.
Don't you pop up and greet people?
I do.
Don't you start training them?
I start
So
training
when
them
so
through
when the real you
everything.
shows up, you're not wasting your time sitting there saying, "Hello, I'm Michael Burt and I'm a basketball coach and I kick butt." They already knew that.
Yes.
You can walk in and they're talking your language, you're talking their language, so it gives you more time to build relationships and polish those diamonds.
Right.
The online's giving them the work.
Right.
And then when you show up, you're just polishing the
And
diamonds.
what they do-
Where before, you were showing up and starting the work.
Yeah.
And work takes longer. So all you did is accelerate the ability for your clients to learn, because now you can be there instantly and work with them until the real you gets there.
Right. And so when we got there, it was accelerated. They already knew the content. It just sped everything up. And so
How long have they been customers?
less than 2 months.
Okay, watch in 6 months if they apply it correctly, and you can see if they're applying it, because you can press a button and see what they're doing. And
Right.
if they're not doing it, you need to call somebody. But if they apply what we're talking about here today with your system, give it another 3 months and ask them. And by the way, did you take a baseline? Like
Yes.
you need to see what results they're doing before you met them.
Yes.
And then you wait till 3 more months, see what results. I guarantee there'll be an increase. How big, I don't know, but an increase, and I guarantee it'll far outweigh the investment they gave you.
Right. When you think about it, so what they do is they start every single morning off. They do their Rockefeller habits. They get together. They go through their vision, their mission. Then they put on Coach Burt.
And they did that before you.
They did that before me.
Which tells you that again, they were already probably kicking ass. And see,
Yes.
It's always the ones that are kicking ass that are smart enough to realize there's more ass to kick.
Right.
See, they're already doing the right things, and those are the people. You know, I've got data from clients all over the country. I mean, we have millions of users on Lightspeed, and I love data. You know what the data tells me? Across the board, guaranteed fact, the number one car dealerships train the most. The number one companies train the most. The number one franchisee trains the most. The number one employee trains the most. From an athlete perspective, is that true for athletes?
Yes.
I'll bet you Tiger Woods, even though he's a little bit showing how old I am, train the most. You know, train the longest, train the most. You know, Michael Jordan, Tim Grover's got a VT system, so I've was asking him a lot about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Michael Jordan used to sit there and practice, even though he was the star of the team,
Right.
and everybody else would leave.
Right.
Michael wouldn't leave.
Well, when you look at mastery, people that are much better, people that are world class, don't practice a little bit more than other people, like an extra hour. They practice significantly more than other people. And that's why they're the best. And they're relentless about their pursuit. So, guys, today we're talking with Brad Lea, founder of Lightspeed VT, Las Vegas, okay? And he's in town working with me today on Mega Monster. I have an online VT system called the Monster Growth Academy, and it is very sequential. Everything I teach live, I teach both live and virtually. See, I'm training myself to say it correctly. It's the exact same thing. So all of the monster producers that are here, we got a monster producer here, Doug from Michigan. Everything he's getting live is also in that platform. It's the same thing. It's me.
Except for me, I'm not in that.
He's not in that platform, but we may add it to the platform.
You got to go to the live environment to get me.
So everything that I'm teaching is in there, but it's really this concept of training, guys. We gotta dig in, and I think that's the big takeaway from today's special edition, because this is the bottom line. The bottom line is your people ain't trained. They may have been exposed, but they're not trained. Yeah, they're exposed, but they're not trained. Training is ongoing, systematic, with accountability. If you're not doing that, you're losing a lot of money. It don't matter how much money you're making, you're losing a lot of money, because without those things, man, people are just wandering out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
lost and confused, thinking they're doing something good.
Well, it's, again, believing the wrong thing. You believe that you're training, so good for you. At least you're one of the companies that train, even though it's not probably training. But go look at the companies that offer, training and real training, and you'll notice that, they're the hardest places to get a job. Why? Well, because, dude, they invest in their people, and watch, it's the #1 companies, the #1 teams, the #1 everything. Training is the single highest ROI you can make. The problem is if you don't believe it. So like, Bitcoin, for example. When I first heard of Bitcoin, I'm like, that's the dumbest thing ever. I'm not investing in Bitcoin. Well, dude, who's the dumbass now? So I didn't understand Bitcoin. I wasn't trained in it. But at the end of the day, using that as an analogy, let's pretend instead of Bitcoin, someone was selling you, what rhymes with bit? Well, we won't even say it, but you follow me. Instead of Bitcoin, you were getting coin. Okay? And for years, you were buying coin. And eventually someone's like, dude, you want to buy some Bitcoin? And you're like, hell no, that stuff sucks. Doesn't work. I got robbed. And in reality, you confused coin with Bitcoin. That's an analogy. You're confusing.
And a good analogy, by the way.
Just like people confuse progress with activity.
Yes.
Like, just because you're moving doesn't mean you're moving.
Difference between high value and low value. There's a high value of your time and a low value of your time, right?
Well, that wouldn't be that's true, but that's not the same analogy. Same analogy is confusion. I wouldn't confuse that. I would confuse activity with progress.
Right.
Like, I'm busy all day, so it means I'm making progress. You can be busy all day and go nowhere. So people confuse activity with progress, and they wonder 2 years later why they haven't gone anywhere.
Too busy being fabulous.
Yeah, brother. And then they get tired, and they're like, "Damn, dude, this is BS. This doesn't work." When in reality, it does work. You were doing it wrong, man.
Guys, I'm Coach Michael Burt. This is the man, Brad Lea, the real Brad Lea. If you're not on my online academy, you need to be. Go to monsterproducer.com. Right there, you can get all the goods, man. We got to slip off and do an accountability session. I want to thank you for watching a special edition of The Bottom Line. Thank you, Brad Lea, for coming from Las Vegas and working with their monster producers. Train people always outperform untrained people.
That's a fact.
Come on, that's the bottom line.
And that's the bottom line.
I love it, man. Thank you, guys.